The title of this PowerPoint is Finding Your Fit. And we talk a lot about this in school counseling, and we'll continue to over the next year. But a lot of times, what we've seen is students get so focused on getting accepted to college that they forget that it's just as much about finding a school that is good and acceptable to them, right? So this, hopefully some of the things that we have to share will help you kind of navigate that. One of the things that I'll tell you, you have this college advising handbook that I just talked about, and it's got a lot of material in it. Most of it is designed to help you stay organized. So each of you is going to kind of create a system of organization that works for you. Some people like electronic, some people like paper. If you like electronic, what I would say is go ahead and make a folder on your desktop titled College with some subfolders in it to save all of your electronic materials that way. If you like printed paper copies, then you're going to want to create a hanging file system, whatever works for you. One of the first things in the handbook is a password spreadsheet. You'll thank me for this when you're 30, because I have over 100 on my spreadsheet right now. And students will always say, well, I use the same username and password for everything. Well, you can't, because eventually something's going to change, or they're going to need a special character in a month and a 4-digit zip code. I don't know, like everything weird. So your passwords are going to change over time. So that's just a template format that you can use. You can password protect a document on your computer is a great way. There's apps to keep up with this, but find a way to keep up with your usernames and passwords. We spend so much time in junior and senior year helping students with this, because they'll come in 4 and 5 and 6 times and say, I forgot my password to Naviance and FAFSA and Common App and everything else. So it's good to go ahead and get in the habit of keeping track of that stuff now, because there's a lot of things that we don't even have access to give you that information. So we can help, but it just will make life easier for you if you have a system for that. Also, keep in mind, there are a few sort of special circumstances as you're applying to college. We'll help you navigate those individually. We're not going to talk in great detail about this tonight, but if you're applying for art, you may need an art portfolio. If you're applying for drama, music, sports, you might need auditions or interviews or portfolios of some sort. We're glad to help with that on an individual basis, but we won't go into detail on that tonight. Also, keep in mind, so this, for a lot of you guys, this probably feels very early, right? And so as we talk to juniors, they're like, oh, I'll worry about college apps my senior year. I don't have time to think about that right now. Junior year is busy. Plenty are the troubles of today, right? True, but at the same time, it's good to think ahead and to be prepared, because does anybody know what the college application deadline is in fall of your senior year? November 1st, right? So just think about it. You get here mid-August. We encourage all seniors to have every college application, most scholarship applications, everything in by November 1st. So that's September and October, basically 2 months in your senior year that you have to work on that stuff. So you don't want to start in August of your senior year. It's best to start now, especially with college visits and all of the preliminary work that we're going to talk about tonight. All right, so a few opportunities that are coming up for you guys as we start thinking ahead towards this year. There are some special opportunities that are just for juniors. One is Governor's School. We sent out an announcement about this in the newsletter that went out on Friday. There are, I believe, 12 highly selective, academically rigorous programs offered by the state of Tennessee. If you are one of our top students who feels like that would be a great opportunity for you, I strongly encourage you to look into it and apply. Deadlines are approaching. They are all of the deadlines are this fall. So go ahead and take a look at that when you get home if that sounds something you might be interested in. In the spring, there is going to be an opportunity called Boys State and Girls State. This is through the American Legion, and the Boys State especially is sort of like a mock government where you're elected to positions and you get a lot of exposure to different parts of the government, and you get to play a role in it. It's very experiential. It looks amazing on a resume. Same thing for Girls State. It's a great, colleges are often looking for leadership opportunities. These are really great things to put down on a college resume. If you're interested in that, we can nominate 2 girls and 2 boys in the spring of this year. So let us know about that. Also, if you were in maybe the top 10 or so percent of nationally of students who took the PSAT last year, this year the PSAT is going to be very important for you because it's your opportunity to qualify in the NMSQT, which is the National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. And this is your one chance to qualify for this competition where you could be a National Merit finalist, which is also a huge honor and very prestigious to colleges. If you're not sure if you were in that category, we'll be notifying students within the next couple of weeks, so you'll get called into the school counseling office and we'll talk to you about that and kind of explain the process and give you some materials to get prepared for that. Okay, so we talked about college is a match to be made, not a prize to be won. So a couple of things that I think are really important as we discuss college, just to kind of to think through how does our Christian worldview apply to college advising? Such an important question. A few things. One is that it's not a competition. God has a plan and a purpose for each student individually. So often I see students and parents that are tempted to fall into the habit of comparing themselves to each other, or thinking about what their friends are doing, or thinking about what their brother did, or thinking about where their older sister went. God has a unique plan and a unique purpose for each of you. And so trusting in that, depending on that, and seeking that out is such an important part of this process. And so more than ever, junior year is a very busy time, but carving out time to spend in the Word, in prayer, really seeking out God's leading, He wants us to draw near to Him, and there's never been a more important time in your life so far to seek Him out and to really seek His direction and leading in this process. And we'll help you with that as you come in and we meet. We'll pray with you. We'll lead and guide you in that, and we'll help you through that process. But it's such an important part, I think, of all of this. And sometimes students will ask, what's a good college? Well, it really just depends on what you're looking for. Every school is a good college for somebody. So some things to think about. So as you're looking at a college, it's not all about the academics. That's a big part of it, but it's also about who you're going to become at this school. So all of you are here tonight because you value Christian education and you value the things that the school has to offer for you and your family. And as you're thinking about colleges, I would just encourage you to take some of those same considerations in mind. So who is this going to help to develop me into someday? Character development should be as much as important as career development. So an example of this that just came up the other day as I was talking to a student, they said, I went on these 2 college visits, and I looked at the art program at both schools. And neither of the schools were Christian schools, but on one campus, I was shocked that students just seemed very stressed out. And they were all stressed, and no one was having fun, and everyone seemed so flustered all the time. On the other campus, they had a great program, but the students seemed like they were really enjoying themselves there. That's an important distinction to look for, right? Also, talking about character development and career development, so as we do the career curriculum, we talk a lot about how your work has the potential to be your ministry in the world. Right? So I strongly believe that God has important work for each of you to do in the world that involves loving Him and loving others. And as you go out into the world and figure out how to apply that to the work that you're doing, that is what gives your work purpose and meaning and value and joy, right? So I hope for that for each of you as you go into whatever field that you go into. But it makes a lot of sense to look at some schools that would be able to provide leadership in both areas. So as you're being discipled in we call it occupational ministry, as you're being discipled in that, it makes sense to have professors and people that are believers that can teach you not just about the work that you're doing, but how it applies to your Christian worldview. And synthesizing those 2 things together in college can be a really powerful experience. So just something to think about. There's, again, lots of options for Christian colleges. They are one of the fastest growing colleges, types of college in the country. And it used to be the case that Christian colleges were sort of considered subpar or not really as academically competitive. There's a lot of really great academically competitive Christian college choices, and you're going to hear about a Christian college fair that's coming up this fall. That would be a great way to find out about some of those. So another thing, so as we were talking about character development, something that's sort of new that you guys need to be aware of is social media and the influence on college applications. So there have been lots of articles about this, about how colleges and future employers potentially can get access to your social media accounts. So this is really important to talk about in high school because a lot of times high schoolers don't even think about this. It doesn't cross their mind. And it may come up 2 years from now, it may come up 5 years from now, it may come up 10 years from now, that someone finds something that was online that you posted. It's called a digital footprint. So you have to be really careful to be setting high standards of character, not just at school, not just in public, but also online, because we would hate to see something like that, a silly mistake come back to really cause you trouble or a lot of unrest in the future. So be very careful with the things that you post and put on your social media. All right, so as you're evaluating schools, a few things to think about. Mrs. Stauffer is actually going to step in here and talk about this for a minute.
Hello. By a show of hands from the parents, how many of you are interested in having your child graduate with their undergraduate degree in 4 years and not more? This is one of the reasons it's really important to find the right match for your student. Transferring between schools can add a lot more classes. Transferring between majors can add a lot more classes and lengthen their college career, and it's a lot more money for you. So we are trying to do all that we can do to help your student find their right match. There are a lot of statistics out there that many students today are not graduating in 4 years for a lot of different reasons, and we would like to see our students go and have the right fit to begin with. We have career placement tests that we've given your students. If they need to go or they've transferred in, they can come see us and we can help them. Our idea behind doing the placement tests is they know perhaps you students have some idea of what you're interested in, what you might like to do in a job, therefore what you might need to major in. We want to save a lot of time and effort and expense by doing this. So as important as it is to get accepted into a college, it's even more important to graduate from college. We have a chart, and it's in your college advising guide, kind of like the Bible when you open it up halfway and find Psalms. If you open this up to about the halfway point and go a few pages back toward the front, there is a guide. It's called a college comparison chart, and it's a great starting point. If you absolutely have no idea right now and your student has absolutely no idea what type of college, what they might be qualified for, they can take a look at this chart and start to see, okay, what's my GPA? What's my initial ACT score or SAT score? Wow, I might be able to qualify for a selective college. What are some selective colleges? And it gives you a list of colleges that fall under each category. So it's a great starting point. Certainly there are many more colleges under each of those categories. Naviance, and your students should know how to log on to Naviance, and if not, they can come see us and we will help them with that. You also will have a parent account that you can go into Naviance. But Naviance can also help your student search for things. Like say you decide it's important that they be at least a 3 hours drive from home. You can do things like select that as one of the criteria in Naviance. The geographic distance, the size of the school, the types of majors offered. It's a powerful tool. So use this as a starting point and then go deeper in Naviance. What we suggest junior year is that you work together as a family to start coming up with a list of possible colleges. At this point, you don't rule much out. There may be a few things you can rule out, but in general, come up with a list of like 10 colleges that you would like to investigate further. The investigation can be websites, Naviance, it can be visits, it can be driving through a campus. Sometimes you can rule out a college just by seeing how spread out it is and where the location is. So our hope is that you'll start with 10, and as you do your research, you eventually get to a list that is about roughly five colleges long. One of those colleges would be a stretch, which is maybe you're kind of falling in the selective category, but hey, you want to go ahead and apply for a highly selective and see what happens. Who knows? Also, we would hope that you would choose 2 or 3 that are kind of in your sweet spot. They're right. You've got the ACT and you've got the GPA to qualify for those colleges. So to give yourself some choices, and then maybe a backup college, kind of a fallback. Like if everything falls apart, I know I'll get into this college and I can be happy there. So your list of 5 should be a variety, but they should also be all colleges that you know as a student and as a family, you know that you can live with those colleges. To help with this process, we have some college fairs coming up, and it's a really great time as a junior to go to these college fairs. There's no pressure on you. You can talk to as many as you can, pick up materials. This is part of your research process, and it's a great way to see a whole bunch of different kinds of colleges in a short period. We recommend that when you go to a college fair, you take a list of labels, and the labels will have your name, address, and phone number and email on them. So that when a college says, hey, you visited our table, could we have your info? You just whip off a label, put it on, and move on to the next table. We also recommend, and we have it in our college advising handbook, that you go prepared with a couple of questions to ask each college. It looks great when you walk up and you are actually demonstrating an interest in the college. You're prepared, you have good questions, you've gone through our suggested questions and picked ones that you actually have those questions and that apply to you. One of the things that colleges look for is a demonstrated interest in their college. So if you start a relationship with the admissions office of a college you're interested in as a junior, and you go back several times, you're calling with questions, you're going to visit them, you go again when you're making your final choices, when your name pops up, they recognize you, and if it's between you and another student and they recognize you and they don't know the other student, guess what? That may be your ticket in. These are 2 college fairs these are not Christian college fairs. These are a variety of colleges that will be represented here. There's also college visits that we host here at CAK. We've already had quite a few colleges roll around. Maybe you've seen some of the videos. We interviewed Berry College and UTK here in Knoxville and University of Alabama. That one has not come out yet to the parents and students, but it'll be coming out soon. And we're going to continue to do that to make it a little easier to not have to go way deep into the websites to find out the information that you need and to try to put it in one place that you can watch together with your student. But if you're interested in certain colleges, in the Naviance, we have a calendar, and it tells when all the colleges are coming. Also, if there's another college that you're interested in and you don't see a visit lined up, let us know. And we've gone to some colleges like Wheaton, and now they're coming because there was a student interested and they weren't on our list, so now they are coming. In terms of Christian colleges, as Pamela mentioned, we have worked with your student, we have partnered with your families on providing a high school Christian education. And if you would like to see that continue, one great way is to encourage your student to look into Christian colleges. There's a Christian college fair being hosted by Grace Christian Academy, and it gives the info here on the 2nd of October. One of the great things you can get, and we have a few of these, but not quite enough for every family, there is a fantastic guide to Christian colleges that they put out each year. You can go to that fair, talk to a lot of different colleges, but also pick up one of these guides. And then here at CAK, we are having what we call the FAFSA Frenzy and Financial Aid Workshop on October 17th. That's a really great thing to go to as a junior. The pressure is not on yet. Again, you can kind of find out, how am I going to finance this education that's coming up? At that, we will discuss federal grants, state grants, the Tennessee Promise, the Hope Scholarship, and many other things, including the financial aid form that's required, the FAFSA.
All right, so this year is a great time to start thinking about, if you haven't started taking college visits, this year is the time to go ahead and start this process. It's really important. So thinking about making a big major life decision and a substantial purchase, really you're going to be spending a lot of money on college. You wouldn't ever purchase a car without taking it for a test drive. So you certainly should never enroll in a college without taking a tour and going on that college campus. So the attendance policy this year, remember, is 8 and 16. So 8 absences per semester, 16 for the year. That includes college visits. So you've got to be kind of careful in how you select these, but we do encourage college visits. Just make sure if you go that you get a note from your school. The reason that you want to do this is because if something were to happen and, like, let's say you have a few college visits and then some sort of illness comes up where you have to miss a few additional days, if you have all of that documented, it's much easier for us to make a case for you and to help you through that process. So we take those into consideration on a case-by-case basis, and I think Mrs. Wallace is extraordinarily reasonable. If you have it well documented and something were to happen, there's grace for that. But just make sure to bring back a note with you and we keep those on file in the attendance office. Also, make sure to schedule the visit at least 2 weeks in advance. You're going to want to give the college 2 weeks notice because there are busy seasons where their tours sometimes fill up. And you want to make sure, if you're going through all of the effort to go drive out to a campus and visit that campus, you really want to take the tour. So make sure to give them 2 weeks notice and get on their list for that campus tour. Remember that when you're on the tour, some students don't realize this. Like, we talked at the senior meeting about this a little bit. I was joking with them that whenever they walk by the college rep tables at lunch, sometimes they kind of go, and they avoid making eye contact with the college reps. And that's kind of weird, y'all. Like, they notice that. Don't do that. So when you see a college rep, interact with them. They're nice people. Like, college reps are always kind, welcoming, easy to talk to people. And so they want to engage with you. They want to have conversations. Even if that's not a college that you're super interested in, it's great to get that practice of interacting with college reps and learning what questions to ask. But especially when you're on a visit or you're interacting or engaging with a college that you are interested in, the more prepared you are, the more engaged you are, the more involved you are, the better of an impression that's going to make on that college rep, and that's memorable to them. So make sure to be thinking about that. Also, make sure to be prepared. When you take a college visit, there are some really great resources in that handbook that will help you feel prepared. So one is, there's a list of college visit questions. There's too many to ask on a visit. Don't ask every question on that list, but go through and highlight some of the ones that are most important to you and have those ready. Because when you take your visit, if you haven't taken a tour yet, you'll find that they go pretty fast, and you're probably not going to have time to think of those questions on the spot on a tour, but if you have them prepared and ready to go, you'll have an opportunity to ask them while you're there, and you'll be thankful that you did. Also, once you finish a visit, there is a spot in Naviance where you can make a journal entry about that visit. And you might think, well, that sounds silly. I'm going to remember the visit. After you take about 5 or 6 college tours, sometimes it starts to kind of get crossed in your mind, like, oh, I really liked the Student Center. Was that Lipscomb or Belmont that I was at when I saw that, or whatever? Some things are very similar, some things are very different, but it's really great to make notes about what did you like, what did you dislike, what did you remember. Also, I can see those notes that you make, so it helps me and Mrs. Stauffer to keep track of your progress in the college application process. So make sure to do that. All right, so grades. A lot of times, students during junior year become very aware of their GPA. If you don't know what a GPA is at this point, it stands for grade point average. That's the sum total of your grades in all of your classes. So colleges get your 6 semester GPA on your transcript when you apply, ours is on a 4.0 scale. That just means an A is a 4.0, a B is a 3.0, a C is a 2.0. Loosely, there are some minuses and pluses in there, but they will receive that. Some colleges will take it as it is, and they'll use that weighted GPA on our transcript as it is. Other colleges, such as UT, will recalculate it into a 16 core credit GPA. So they're going to recalculate your GPA based on the courses that they're looking at, which are like 4 math, 4 English, 3 history, 3 science, 2 foreign language, a visual art. They'll recalculate it based on those classes and create a core GPA. But other colleges will just take the one off of our transcript. Bible counts in your GPA. Students ask this every year. Does Bible count in my GPA? Yes. On our transcript, as we send it, Bible does count in your GPA. The only thing that doesn't count would be like a pass-fail class. So like if you took driver's ed, if you took PE, if you took something that's pass-fail, that's not going to calculate into your GPA. So is senior year important? Sometimes there's all these rumors that go around in high school. I'm sure you guys heard when you were a freshman that freshman year doesn't count. I don't know who started that rumor like 20 years ago, but I've heard it every year since I've been here. You guys know now that that's not true. In fact, it counts 33% roughly of your overall GPA that colleges are looking at, so it's very important. Similarly, senior year also counts, and it's also important for different reasons. So no, they're not going to get that on your transcript right away, but some colleges will ask for mid-year transcripts. So in December, they're going to get to see your updated GPA based on how you did the first semester of senior year. So that's something that to be aware of. Also, scholarships. Some colleges will take into consideration your final scholarship at the end, final GPA for scholarship purposes at the end of senior year. Just be aware of those things. Senior year is important. They also want to see that your transcript reflects consistent rigor or increasing rigor over the years. So what they don't prefer to see is a student who has taken honors, AP, dual enrollment all the way through junior year, and then suddenly they get to senior year and they're like, you know what? I've put the hard work in the first 3 years. I'm just going to kind of take it easy this year, maybe take a bunch of electives. I'm kind of over AP and dual enrollment. And then they see a big shift from junior to senior year. That does not look good on a transcript. I can't tell you how many students I talk to about why it's not a good idea to take 2 study halls your senior year. That's a real conversation that I have on a regular basis. Don't take 2 study halls. You can't take 2 study halls your senior year. It's not good to drop off on the AP and dual enrollment courses. Keep up the hard work, and you'll be glad that you did that when you get to college because you'll be so well prepared because of it. All right. We're not going to go into great detail about this part, and we're running out of time, so I'm going to go quickly through it. But we will have a testing meeting in January. I strongly recommend coming to that as a testing interpretation meeting. We'll talk more about composite scores and benchmarks and all of the things that you'll need to know that apply to college admissions testing. But just quickly, these are college readiness benchmarks for the ACT. So you'll see an 18 in English, 22 in math, 22 in reading, 23 in science. These scores, if you have attained this score on the ACT on each section test, it's indicating that there's a 50% chance of obtaining a B or higher or a 75% chance of obtaining a C or higher in the corresponding first year course. And the first year course is listed behind the subject test. So like English correlates with English composition, mathematics with algebra, reading with social studies and humanities, and science with biology. So that just kind of gives you an idea if you're on track for college. In general, the science one is the hardest to hit, usually for students, and it's not really the most important one. So the math and the reading are ones that colleges are really focusing on more for benchmarks. Testing, just quickly, the ACT versus the SAT. Most of our students take the ACT. About 99% of our students sophomore year score better on the pre-ACT than the pre-SAT. So they end up taking the ACT because we say, really, it's best to focus on one test, do your best, become an expert, get lots of practice and experience and exposure to that test. So most of our students do take the ACT. Prep is always beneficial for different reasons. So whether you're trying to get your benchmark score up or you're trying to apply for competitive scholarships, that can be a really worthwhile investment and with a great return on it. A 21 or higher on the ACT qualifies you for the Hope Scholarship. The criteria for that is either a 3.0 GPA or a 21 or higher on the ACT. Also a 29 or higher in conjunction with a 3.75 GPA, that's a both and, will qualify you for the General Assembly Merit Scholarship and some other highly selective scholarships. So those are good scores to shoot for if you're in range. Also, SAT subject tests. Some colleges, highly selective schools, will require SAT subject tests. Most schools do not. So most of you won't have to worry about that. But if you are looking at one of those like Vanderbilt, Stanford, Harvard, Yale type schools, then you're going to want to make sure to go ahead and look into taking a couple of subject tests.
In addition to a good, strong GPA and a good ACT score, there are some other things that are important in getting accepted into the college of your choice. First is letters of recommendation, and now is not too early to be thinking about that. Junior year is a great time for our students to form strong bonds with certain academic teachers, especially academic teachers in the areas that you might be pursuing in college. Those letters of recommendation really stand out. When a teacher knows your student, when a teacher can vouch for the student's academic capability, that's saying that this student will be successful at the college they want to go to. And colleges like to hear that because they don't like to see students transfer out because they're not cutting it. So we want to make sure that the teacher recommendations are strong for the colleges to understand the quality of our students. Also, the essays. Many college applications have essays that the students write. Many times there are choices of a prompt. And what colleges like to see these days is a story. They may ask a question about, tell us something that demonstrates what kind of person you are. And if you as a student can tell a story that really demonstrates a certain character that you have, that's much more readable to whoever is presented with your application materials. And we want them to hang on and to make it through your story and to be able to see how you've applied your wonderful attributes. Another thing, if you've been involved in anything in a leadership aspect, or if there's some unique thing that you've done within an activity that you're in, it's so much better to be able to speak to that specifically as opposed to, I was a member of the such and such. It's so much better to show active participation or leadership. Finally, community service and any, we used to call them extracurricular, now they're called co-curricular activities. If you want to be a French major in college and you were the president of the French club, that's great. If you were very involved in the National Honor Society or the National English Honor Society, that's great. So make sure that you remember those things, and you're kind of making a running tally of those now so that when the applications open, some as early as the 1st of August, the summer after junior year, you're ready. You've got it. You've already got your teachers lined up. You already know what your application is going to look at, and it takes a lot of the stress out of the whole process. Parents and students have a role in this. I'm really encouraged by how many of you are here and together with your students, because it is a family deal trying to figure this all out. Now's the time to start talking about it, and start with prayer. Start praying for it now, that there's the right college with the right friends, with the right major and the right job. These are things that require a lot of prayer to discern, and we recommend, even though it's last on this list, it really needs to be first and last and sprinkled throughout. Family time, talking about the things I mentioned, like where do you want to be? Does it feel, do you kind of see yourself at a small college or a really big one? Do you want to go see those big sports events, or do you want to be able to potentially play on a sports team, and is that a factor? Talk about what should your student, talk with your student about what they would like to get out of college. I mean, is it fantastic grades and internships? Is it great friends that can bolster them through the rest of their lives? Is it continuing their Christian walk and strengthening it as they go through college? Hopefully it's some of all of that, but talk to them about those things. Go with them to fairs. Be an active participant as you're doing right now in this whole process, because it can be a scary process. And I've had lots of the seniors come in, we both have, saying, I'm kind of freaked out after the senior meeting you just had. And parents are calling kind of saying the same thing. And it doesn't have to be that way. Start now, think of these things now, and then when we have the senior meeting, you'll go, oh yeah, I got this. We've been working on this for a while. And the role for the student, this is the time for you to, as parents, to back away a little and let the students make the calls to the college. If they've got a question about something about the application, let them be the ones to address it with the admissions rep. Encourage them to stop by the tables that we have. As Pamela mentioned, sometimes students are afraid to just go up to a random college, but in fact, that's the very best time to practice. Just go. Start with a college that is not really where you want to go and start practicing those questions and start practicing talking to people you don't know who want to talk about college things, because they'll tell you things. Sometimes when I kind of go get a debrief from some of these colleges, they have programs that most people don't even know about. And it may be that you are actually interested in one of these colleges that you randomly go by. So I encourage you as students to go do that. Keep your friendly neighborhood school counselor involved in the process. Please come see us anytime. Parents, you can make an appointment at any time from now through senior year, and we are happy to help walk your student through the process and encourage you and tell you from Pamela's vast knowledge and my quickly growing knowledge. And again, pray for God's leading throughout the process. High school goes fast. You've probably already seen that. Here you are, junior year. It feels like by the time you adjust to high school, it's time to start planning for college. So keep that in mind. The one thing that I learned in the college process, I have a freshman at UT now and then a senior this year and two others also in the high school. And as we went through the process last year, I just kept telling myself, there's a college for everyone. There's a college for everyone. And I tried so hard to encourage him and to do this for myself, to run our own race. This is about where he needs to go to college or where she needs to go to college. It's not about what any other family is doing. And your student, with your help and with God's help, will figure out the right plan, and it will be a joy to see them go step into that plan. But we're here to walk with you.
All right, so hopefully that helps just to kind of get the ball rolling. We understand that it's a lot of information for one night. That's why your handbook is a resource that you can take home with you. Please look through that later. We put a lot of time in. I think it was somewhere around 20 hours worth of work to compile all of that material for you, but we felt like that would be a really helpful resource for you to have in your hands tonight. So I have the pleasure and honor of introducing a special guest tonight. We have Mr. Tom Broadhead, our admissions rep from UT Knoxville. You may recognize Mr. Broadhead from a video that we sent out to you recently where he talked about UT and college advising. And he's back tonight to talk about, in a general way, just the college application process from a broader view. So we're just going to take this opportunity to ask him a few questions and to get his perspective on the college application process and hear what he has to say. So thank you so much for coming, Tom. We're so glad to have you back. I know our time is running short, so I'm going to jump right in and go ahead and ask. The first question we have is, how can students determine if a college is a good fit for them?
Okay, well, first let me say that I have been looking over this. This is a fantastic resource for you. So read it carefully. Don't just gloss over it. Read it carefully. How do you decide if a college is a good fit for you? There are a lot of things that go into that, and that checklist, that's going to help you narrow down some of your choices. U.S. News and World Report publishes a college guide about this time every year. It's worth spending a few dollars to purchase one of those. Do you want to go to a large school, a small school, a public school, a Christian school? I mean, there are so many different factors. I mean, each of you is a special individual with special talents and interests. And it really, you want to try to find a school, or maybe a few schools to apply to, that actually have programs that match your interests. And one of the things that I brought tonight, and a few of you picked them up, if you didn't, on your way out, even if you're not even thinking about UT, go ahead and pick up one of these brochures. It is, I think it's a convenient shopping list. On the back side, there's a list of our academic programs. There are important dates about applying the FAFSA, some of the other things that were mentioned earlier. And you can use that also as kind of a guide for things to look for when you are looking online, reading brochures, going to a college fair, or actually, and I'll say that there's nothing better than actually visiting a campus.
Tom, can you explain the term holistic review and talk about what that looks like from a college perspective?
Well, first of all, you are not defined by two numbers, your grade point average and your test score. I mean, you are a unique individual, and holistic review is an approach to college admissions that looks at everything in your application. Those recommendations are important because they give us information about you and about some of your accomplishments. The essays are important because they give you an opportunity to tell us about yourself as a person and not just two numbers. Your activities, your volunteer work, all of those things go into holistic review. Typically, that is an approach that is taken by colleges that have either a selective or a highly selective admission process. For a lot of colleges, a lot of good colleges have more of a general admission process, and if you have this GPA and this test score, you're in. But more selective schools, UT, a lot of private schools, do a very detailed holistic review because we want to be sure that we are offering you admission because you're a good match for us and we have the facilities that will help you to excel.
So we talked a little bit about the college admission chart, which that's the chart that breaks down schools into different categories based upon how selective they are. And when we talked about that, we encouraged you to apply to a reach school, a few schools within your range, and a fallback school. For students who are applying to a reach school that's maybe a little bit above their range and maybe they're concerned about whether or not they'll be accepted to that school, what advice could you give that student about how to make their application as competitive as possible?
And if you're wondering if your numbers, and I don't want to discount numbers because your GPA, your grades, and your test scores are important, but if you want to know how would I compare to the entering fall class at, Harvard or Carson Newman or UT or Vanderbilt or any other school, the U.S. News and World Report guide publishes the middle 50% range for grades and test scores. And that is, we are actually told by our umbrella organizations, don't tell people your averages, tell them the middle 50% range. Because the middle 50% range, that means the lower end of that, 75% of the students that they offered admission to had that range of from that number on up for test scores. So that can give you a good idea about if it was just based on grades and test scores, do I fit in that middle 50%? If you do, then your chances of being admitted are high if you are in the middle 50% for both GPA and test scores. And what was the rest of the question? I'm sorry.
And so how can they make their application more competitive?
Right. Okay, so to make your application more competitive, and here we're talking about holistic review, that is where the quality of your essays, the content of the recommendations, and there again, the people who write recommendations for you, we like to see them mention, maybe go into detail on maybe one thing that you did or two things that you did. We don't want a list of activities in your recommendation because we already see that in your application. We want the recommendation to tell us something that we don't already know. And then your dedication to clubs and organizations, community service, all of those things, again, that really make you a real person to us, even if we've never met you. Those are great things to help your application.
How important are the ACT benchmarks, and how do you use those in the admissions and class placement process? The only one of those benchmarks that we use very specifically at UT is the math benchmark. Okay, the others, not so much, but there are a lot of studies that have shown that math readiness is really, really important. And there are a lot of academic majors at UT that do not require that you have a high level of math experience. There are some like engineering, nursing, and so on, where they do require a high level of math experience. So the benchmarks and different colleges and universities are probably going to look at those differently. But as far as UT is concerned, the math one, that is also used by our math department for placement in the math classes that you might be taking your freshman year.
So I mentioned earlier that so often I see juniors that at the beginning of their junior year, they just have this revelation about how important their grades are. And they start really caring a lot about college applications and making themselves as competitive as possible for college. So what advice, Tom, would you give to a student in that situation who maybe got a little bit of a slow start freshman year, didn't take grades as seriously as they would have liked to in retrospect, but now junior year is really invested in improving and getting prepared for college?
Okay. One of my favorite sayings about high school grades is that your first 3 years of grades are what will get you into college. And although this is not part of this question, it's your senior year grades and courses that you take that will help keep you in college. Okay, so typically colleges and universities make decisions based on 6 semesters of high school grades. So the junior year can be a wake up and I have to get down to it year. Because so many schools use holistic review, I mean, we look at your transcript and we will notice if all of a sudden your grades have a sharp uptick your junior year. Hey, that's great. And maybe you didn't have a great freshman or sophomore year. It may have been because you weren't studying so hard. It may have been you may have had an illness or something in your family that was a distraction. Sometimes those are things that you might want to mention in a personal essay. If there was something that kind of got in the way of your academic progress that you want to share with an admission committee, don't be shy. Do that.
How about once a student is on campus and they start to struggle academically? What sort of supports do you have in place for those students?
At UT, and I don't think we're too much different from most other schools, we have a Student Success Center. And Student Success Center offers a lot of free tutoring programs. The math department has its own free tutoring program. The English department has the writing center where you can go and maybe you just want a little bit of help on improving an essay or something for another class, and they provide free help on that. So universities have lots of offices like these, but you have to not only know where they are, but you have to seek them. And one of the saddest things every year are students who begin to experience some difficulty, and instead of walking right over to the Student Success Center, or we have a counseling center too, and it may be something that they have some emotional challenges, or maybe being away from home, maybe being close to home, that if they don't seek the help that we have, that can be really difficult. If they are living in campus housing, our highly trained resident assistants will be there. If they see something that they're concerned about, they might suggest to a student, maybe you need to go talk to a academic advisor, or maybe you want to go talk to a friendly person at the counseling center. So it's seeking, it's walking out of your room and walking into an office for the help that you need. And that's, when you are, an adult in college, that is a tough thing to do. That is a very tough thing to do.
That is so true and very timely, because if you took a look at the newsletter that went out, apologies about all of the attachments on that, but there were some resources for you guys that were sent out last Friday, and the article in the newsletter was about the skill of resourcefulness. And we have seen that over the years. It's something that is not easy. Like Mr. Broadhead said, it's not an easy thing for high school students to ask for help all the time, and it doesn't get any easier in college. But even if it doesn't come easily or naturally to you, it's a really important habit to get yourself in asking for help and seeking out resources and taking advantage of those. And I have observed over the years that students who do that are not just successful in high school, but in life. It's a skill that benefits them forever. And so it's a really important one that we try to help students establish in high school. So, Tom, we have a lot of students that are applying for competitive scholarships. How could they distinguish themselves in that process?
Okay, at some schools, they actually have interviews for some of their top scholarships, but most likely the applying for scholarships, for competitive scholarships, is just going to be some committee reading about you on paper. And that is where the authenticity of your personal essays, you're talking about your life experiences, your leadership experiences, your community service, the information provided by recommenders. That's where that is so very, very important. And do not be shy. I saw a application once where the student actually wrote under activities that they were a passive, don't ever use that word, passive fundraiser. They were a bell ringer for the Salvation Army, okay? I think that takes a lot of courage, honestly. And yet they kind of covered it up. I mean, when you read the thing, you knew what that was. And I thought, that's really cool, but I wish they had just said that. So you never know what you're going to write that somebody's going to say, hey, I did that when I was that age. But be authentic. Write your own essays. We do get calls. I'll get a call and say, well, I was working on my son's essay, and I'm like, Mom. No, but nonetheless, I do think it's very appropriate. We don't like to see misspellings and grammatical errors. It certainly is appropriate after you have written your essay to have other people look at it and maybe critique it for you, including your teachers here. Okay, so.
Speaking of essays, can you tell us a little bit about the difference between the personal essay for the application, the personal statement, and the scholarship essay? And can you also give us a couple of examples of really great essays that you've seen or topics?
Our application, and this may or may not be true of other applications that you're doing for admission, there is one required personal essay. And there are choices of kind of general topics, what's the challenge that you faced, and tell us how you overcame that. Please talk about something you did in high school, okay? The ones where, and they may be really interesting stories, but we think of, in high school, you're a young adult. Before that, I hate to use the word child, but yeah. And so the relevance of the example that you write about, that's going to be important too. So keep it, especially if it's something that happened last year or last month or something like that. Personal statement is an opportunity, and for us, that's optional. It will be true of other schools. That's an opportunity for you to tell us something else that you want us to know. It might be another example similar to the one in your personal essay, but you thought, gee, I had such a hard time figuring out which one to write about. Well, here's your opportunity to write about both of those, or to write about something that's a contrast to the one that you first wrote. But again, the personal means personal. I mean, this is information about you as a person. It's from your heart, from your soul, what you value. That is informative to us. Scholarship essays will usually have some kind of prompt, and our competitive scholarship essay for at least 20 years has asked for students to talk or to write about an important experience that you have had as a high school student, and especially one in which you might have had a leadership role. So it's not terribly different from the personal essay or the optional personal statement, but again, it's another piece, another opportunity to tell people who are making important decisions something important about yourself.
All right, so letters of recommendation are something that students often find to be confusing, and they hear sort of different things that can make it hard for them to decide how to handle this. We always tell students to look for a teacher that knows you well. Again, not a middle school teacher because it needs to be relevant and recent. So a high school teacher that knows you well and can speak about your strengths. But as students are thinking about that, we also tell them, don't ask for more letters than you need. So if you need 2 letters, ask for 2 letters. Don't ask for 3 letters. If you need 1 letter, ask for 1. If you don't need any letters, you don't need to ask for letters. That's okay. Because we don't want teachers to be putting in lots of extra hours. If every student this year asked for an extra letter that they didn't need, there'd be 100 or so extra letters written, and that'd be about 200 hours of work sort of wasted that wasn't really needed to be done. So they're glad to write your letters, but choose carefully and don't just ask for extra letters arbitrarily. So what advice would you give to a student who was, colleges usually advertise a minimum and a maximum number of letters. How would they decide what would be an appropriate number and who to ask for those letters?
Okay. Actually, for our admission application, letters are optional. And we do not require those for our admission application. However, if you are applying to a school and you look them up in U.S. News and World Report and you see that your grades and test scores are kind of at the low end of that mid 50% or maybe even below it in the 25% that they offered admission to, then that is where recommendations can be really, really helpful, because as Mrs. Kilborn and Ms. Stauffer said earlier, colleges are looking for evidence of your success. And if your grades and your test scores are modest than a teacher or a counselor's recommendation that talks specifically about how great you did in a particular class, something that the admission committee can say, yeah, okay, well, that's it. That's great. You know, that's great information we want. Let me ask, is there anybody here who is a dentist? Okay. So, the most interesting recommendation letter that I ever read was from the applicant's orthodontist. Now, some of you, if you're interested in medicine, then shadowing a physician can be a really cool and informative thing to do. But actually, the student was this doctor's patient. And the student was planning on going into political science and not pre-dentistry. And the letter said that the student had never missed an appointment, practiced good oral hygiene, a couple of other things like that, that the doctor wrote all the good things that he could write about that student, who was, by the way, also my children's orthodontist, you know, and a very good one at that. I won't name names, though, but I read this letter and I was speechless. It was a poor choice by the student. And I'm thinking, and this student had very high grades and test scores. I'm thinking, you couldn't find another teacher to write a recommendation? I'm sure you could have, but that's my kind of, and that letter, it's about 20 years old, but it has never been thrown away. It's not just in my mind. I know where it is, and every now and then I think, oh yeah, I remember that letter. Yeah. So.
Can you talk a little bit about the college visit, the importance of that, and what a student should be looking for on a college visit?
In addition to things like, listed degree programs and availability of scholarships and, nice residence halls and things like that, college visit there is nothing better than a college visit. And I have known cases, my daughter, colleague's daughter, who, you go, you set up a college visit, you drive onto campus, and they said, I don't like it. Just looking at it. I mean, there is a feeling, there is a sense of belonging that is important, and that is going to be part of your success in college. It's not just the grades that you earn from your reading and computer work and lab work. There is a lot more to it that will help promote your success. And so being on a college campus and taking a tour, we offer weekday tours all but major holidays at UT, and one Saturday a month, and then we have open house programs. A lot of schools that you're probably looking at will have some kind of visit program. Take advantage of those. Summer between your junior and senior year, make that your summer vacation. Go around and visit colleges and go on tours and go to all those places, because when it comes down to it, you will find that some of these just feel better to you than others.
That's so true. We were just talking about that earlier today. And over the years, we've told students that over and over again over the years. And students, I think, are always a little bit skeptical of hearing that. They're like, yeah, I'll get a feeling. Okay, how do I figure out where to go to college? But it's proven itself to be so true. When they take the visit, they just get this sense of assurance that the logical choice that they've made to apply is actually going to be a good fit for them in reality. So that visit is such an important experience for students. Graduation rates. We talked a little bit about, I think the national average for graduation rates is somewhere around 60% right now, 58% maybe. So that means that a lot of students who go to college don't graduate and don't get degrees, and they still have to pay the tuition for the time that they were there, but they don't have anything to show for it. We want to make sure that we prepare our students not just to go to college, but to finish college. So I think you said earlier something about how senior year is, your grades in senior year help to ensure your success in college. What other habits and behaviors and mentalities can you tell us that you think are important to ensure college success?
Meet people. That is really, really important. And again, it's part of the, at UT, we call it the volunteer experience. Volunteer experience at University of Tennessee is rooted in strong academic traditions, but we also play a little football, and we have more than 500 organizations that students can join. And more than 100 of those are academic and professional organizations. And so become a part of something, join something that interests you. We have a wonderful religious life on campus, and most campuses have a place called Fraternity Row or Sorority Row. We have Fraternity Park, but we also have what we call Religious Row, and it is a street that has a lot of the Christian denomination facilities on it, and so all kinds of things. We just want you to get involved, and we really think that you will find that enriching your life outside of the traditional classroom and outside of the library is going to be an important part of your, not only your college and university experience, but when you get ready to graduate, if you're going on to graduate school or employment, your involvement and your ability to work with others, whether it's recreational, social, or academic, those are life skills that you'll be developing during the time that you're in college. And so those, I think that's, again, it's holistic. It's everything that you do matters and is important and is related to other things that you do and your interactions with other people and the ways that you can help other people.
Yes, that's so true. And there have been a lot of studies lately that have shown that being engaged on your college campus actually correlates very directly to your likelihood of graduating and your potential for success on that college campus. Also, employers are really starting to value soft skills, and we talk about this a lot. These are skills that are hard to quantify, so it's not your grade point average, it's not your test scores, but these are like social skills and resilience and things like that matter a lot to employers. And so that's something that's really important to develop in college, along with your knowledge of the content area that you're studying. All right, guys. Well, this is very much a process. So as we work through the process, we've got our contact information on the board and on the front of your handbook. So feel free to reach out to us if you want to schedule an individual advising appointment, if you have specific questions or need assistance with any part of the process. Just let us know. We're going to hang out for a few minutes tonight if you have questions and you'd like to come talk to us individually. Thanks so much for coming. We really appreciate you guys.